what we're learning in today's Tanya, that the Beinoni, here's the deal. The Beinoni has two full, powerful drives pushing him. He has his instinctive drive pushing him that wants him to indulge instinctively in all physical pleasures, in all bodily pleasures. And then he has his mind, the godly soul, who's in the mind, his main office, his seats in the mind, who wants him to do what's the right thing to do, what intellectually he knows is the right thing to do. Right? He wants him to get in touch with the godly soul, with what's the right thing to do, and not go instinctive. And they're both talking to him, they're both pushing him. Now, so the animal soul, it's 10 attributes, it's powerful, it's full on, it's strong in the Beinoni. The tzaddik, he already tamed the animal, or he's quiet, or he changed him, depending on what kind of tzaddik it is. In the wicked person, the animal is strong, and the animal is sometimes winning even. But in the Beinoni, the animal's strong, and he's constantly sending messages. And he's saying, desire this, want this, eat this, do this, say this, think this. And as soon as all these messages are coming to his mind, and the Beinoni is in control, at least in the garments, meaning in the thought. He says, no, I'm not going to think about it. In the speech, I'm not going to speak about it. I know you want me to, and I'm not going to speak about it. Action, I know you want me to do this, but I'm not going to do it. So he's in control of the thought, speech, and action, but he's not in control that he's having these impulses, and they could be very strong and powerful impulses. And it's pushing up to his mind, and he's saying, think about the sinful thought. And he's saying, no, I'm not going to, but he can't control it. The fact that he keeps on being pushed to think about those sinful thoughts. That urge, he can't control that. He's a Beinoni. But he could control is that I'm not going to indulge those thoughts. I know it's coming up in my mind. And I know you want me to talk about it. It's a good piece of gossip that I'm really interested in sharing with somebody else. I'm going to really enjoy it. But I'm not going to. That's the Beinoni. So the Beinoni is totally not in control of the impulses that he's having. But he's controlling acting and thought, speech, and action. That the Beinoni is completely in control. So let's learn that in the Tanya now. Beautiful, interesting stuff that as we understand the Beinoni. Rak mipnei shaloi loi levadei mishpat hamelucha b'mamshala be'ir, just because the Beinoni is not the godly soul, is not the only one in charge. He can't. The animal soul wants, but he's not in charge. You're not the boss. So maybe like the kids in the house, like we described in the earlier Tanya. The kids want something, but you're not the boss. I don't care how much you want it. It's not healthy for you, and the parents are going to decide it's not okay. So you're not in charge. You're very strong, and you have the impulses, and you want to indulge, but you are not in charge. We're going to control you, that you can't do what you want. Where do you not have the last say? In the thought, speech, and action. Thinking, speaking, and action. You're not in charge. You might have very strong will and impulses and drive, but you're not in charge. To think, to concentrate, and now start meditating. How am I going to fulfill this drive? No, I'm not thinking how I want to fill this drive. I'm not thinking how it can be selfish and self-centered and fulfill my lust and my drive. Why? And here's something very powerful. We got to. This is key element to the structure of the body. I want to share with you what I heard Manas Friedman explain a little bit. I found it very interesting. Why not? Because the mind controls the heart. This is it. This is a huge key. The impulses might be strong, but the structure of the creation of the human being, the makeup of it, is that the mind controls the heart. I do not care how much strong impulses and passion you have. And the Yetzer Hara, the inclination of the animalistic drive is strong. The reality is that the mind can, at the end of the day, control the thought, speech, and action. He might not be able to control the impulses, but the mind has the overhand. It's not just, I want to say even 50-50, that it's the animal soul versus the godly soul. No, the godly soul has the ability to control the animal soul. Let me explain to you. So 1 or 2 points, maybe that Rabbi Manas Friedman said. He says that the animal, I like how he said the animal, the lusts, right, that the animal feels, the strong urges that the animal's feeling, it's fake. Why is it fake news? Why? Because it's all just It's not substance. It's just a drive, an inclination, a feeling, an emotion that it wants. But it's not real. It's actually there to be won over, to be tamed. The godly soul, the mind, that's real. He has by natural default the upper hand. In other words, the animal soul is, why I say it's fake. Why do we say the animal soul is fake? Let me explain. Why do we say the animal soul is fake? Because darkness is not a real existence, he's going to want to say in today's time. It's just a darkness is an outcome of that there is no light. It doesn't really exist. It just exists when there's no light there. And therefore, he's going to explain, I believe in today's time, we're going to explain today's Tanya. When you want to fight darkness, number one, you just turn on the light. Naturally, darkness goes away because it's not a real substance. It's not a real existence. Number one. Number two, a little bit of light chases away a lot of dark. So because the darkness is not even real, so the fact that the human being mind can deal with the impulses, you should know that's normal and that's natural, that's the one who should win. Because it's all, what do you call a mirage? It's a fake. It's not even real. It's just lust. It's not something real. The mind is the one that's real. I know the emotions might feel very real, but they're all a creation in a vacuum where you're not having a healthy amount of godliness and intellectual. In other words, it's not even a question that godliness should win over darkness. It's obvious. It's obvious. You want to know why he's going to say in Tanya, I believe also now, why is it the darkness wins sometimes? It's because the guy's simply not in the right frame of mind. It's like today's Chumash. You know why the Jews couldn't listen to Moshe? Because they were totally zonk. They were not in the right frame of mind. So when people sin, you want to know why they sin? That they make fiction reality, that they make the fake animalistic tendencies, that wins, God forbid, sometimes, is because they're not in the right frame of mind. If they're healthy and their mind is thinking and they're healthy human beings, it's obvious that the mind should control the heart because that's the natural inkling, the way it is. Because even the animalistic drives are all fake. It's just drives of nothing real. It's nothing beneficial. It's just a drive. It's a feeling that's not really substantial. And therefore, the mind controls the heart. That's what he's trying to say in today's time. A very important point. So no one in life should say, I couldn't help myself. No, you could help yourself. You want to know why? Because the system and the makeup of the way God created the human being is that the mind does control the heart. So the godly soul should win the animal soul by nature, at least in thought, speech, and action. It might not be able to change the impulses. Even though you have the impulses, you cannot act on your impulses because the way you're made up is that the mind does have the overhand, the ability to control the heart. Because the mind controls the heart, just like it says in the Zohar. That the nature, by innate nature and virtue, the mind is in control of the heart. Because that is how man is created in his youth, in his creation. Everybody can have full control of the mind over the heart and control and not do it. Just say no. Rabbi Gordon says in his classes, I think he says, Nancy Reagan says, just say no. That is the natural way we were created. That you shouldn't act on it, thought, speech, and action. You really might want to say it. You really feel like you want to say it. You want to give the person over the head. You're not an animal. You want to know what an animal is? I'll tell you what an animal is. Is that when you have the instinct and the impulse, you do it. That's an animal. That's it. You have the instinct, impulse, you do it. That's exactly what an animal is. And if you live like that, you act like an animal. But you're not, because you're a human being and Hashem gave you a mind, and the mind by nature controls the heart. And therefore, your mind, it's by nature, no one could say I had to do it. You didn't have to do it because you're a human being, and a human being has a mind. An animal has to do it maybe, but a human being has a mind and can control himself. And he could, no matter how strong the impulse is, he could push and say no, and I'm not doing it, and move himself away to go the opposite direction of where the impulse wanted him to do it. I don't know, a guy's getting you really angry, and by nature you want to scream at him. You can control yourself and give the guy a hug instead. I'm not saying you can control that. You maybe don't have the impulses that you want to kill the guy. You might have the impulses you want to kill the guy. You might not be able to control those impulses, but what you actually do in your thought, speech, and action, now you have control. Especially when the conversation here is not just, until now we're talking not even about holiness, just anything in life. Your mind controls your heart. But especially when we're talking about God and we're talking about Torah mitzvahs and holiness, there's no question that godliness and holiness is the right way to choose. And when you look and you contrast your animal, this instinct and impulse that you're acting like an animal to godliness and holiness and spirituality and connecting to Hashem and doing good things, of course that should win. What do you mean? What's the question? Of course the mind needs to control the heart. It doesn't matter what feelings you're having. This is the right choice. And he brings down from Shlomo HaMelech these two ideas that we want to bring out, that the mind is in control of the heart. We see that there's, what does King Solomon say? And we're going to question the statement here. King Solomon says, I see, this genius King Solomon says, I see that wisdom is better than folly, that there's a benefit to being brilliant, to being wise over being silly. And just like there is a benefit to light over darkness, wisdom is better than folly. Yava's question is, what are you talking about, King Solomon? You're the most brilliant man. That's your statement that you have to tell us, is that light is better than darkness, that wisdom is better than silliness and folly. Come on, King Solomon, what do you really mean over here? Pirush, what does it mean? Alter Rebbe explains that just like light is the boss over darkness, it's controlling darkness. Why? Why do we say that light controls darkness? Because if you put a little light, little tiny candle, little light, it'll light up the whole room. Especially, I guess, with LED bulbs today. You know, you can light up a whole thing. First of all, a little light can literally change and bring light to a huge room. So it's not even a competition. But number two, it's not that the light has to fight with the darkness. Just by turning on, the lightness just automatically disappears. It's not even a game. It's not even a fair competition. Why is that? Because light, here's one of the details. I love that Rabbi Badas Friedman explained. Because the darkness is not even real. It's not a real existence. It just exists because there's no light. So as soon as the light goes on, the darkness disappears. So it's not a fair competition between the two. Because the lights go on of godliness and holiness. And what do you mean this animal wants this selfish thing? It's not even a competition. Automatically, the animal soul whose office, whose centers in the left side of the heart, shuts down and is quiet. So why then do people fall to their animal soul if this is so obvious? The animal's not real. Everything he wants, it's not even real existence. It's just lust and that don't even exist. They're not even real things. But he's running after his silliness. So why do people do stupid things in life? Right? God forbid they turn on their partner, maybe, or God forbid kill someone or do. Why do people do such things if it's so obvious? You want to know why? The answer wasn't today's chumash. Is because they're not themselves. They're not themselves at the moment. If they were themselves, they would never do the sin. Like the rabbis say of a woman, as we're learning in our Gemara class, we're going to learn the Talmud tonight. When a woman goes into a room with another man and she's unfaithful with another man, you want to know, it's not that the woman was not acting, who did this was not acting in the right frame of mind. That it's a spirit of folly came on the person. Had they been in their right mind, it would be impossible for the animal soul. The animal soul got them to a place that they're tired and they're weary. Maybe a terrible thing happened. People do stupid stuff when they had they're not in the right frame of mind. Something terrible maybe happened before, low self-esteem, or as Rabbi Shea Stab likes to say a lot of his classes now, they had a trauma. You want to know why they're doing something wrong? Because they have major trauma. And if they're acting, they didn't have that trauma, they would never do these things. Because the wisdom that's in the godly soul is so much stronger. It's so much obviously the winner. It wouldn't be in question. The godly soul says, this is silly. I should not think these things about these people. I shouldn't speak these things about these people. I shouldn't do these things that I'm doing. These are all animalistic drives, and it wants to be in full control of the thought, speech, and action of the person. Again, the Beinoni might not be able to control the drive that he's having, but he control if he acts on it in thought, speech, and action. So all he wants to do is use the thought, speech, and action of the human being, the clothing, the garments of the person, to fulfill the 630 commandments of the Torah, like I mentioned earlier. So that is the godly soul is by nature, by default, way head and shoulders above his competition. By nature, he should win. It's only that sometimes the person is not themselves. And at that point, where the animal so wearies the person down that they shouldn't be acting in the right frame of mind, that they might come to sin. Now, so the godly soul, so what's the Beinoni? Here's the Beinoni. The Beinoni is full control. He's able to control all these impulses, and the thought, speech, and action is totally godly. Yet he's not a tzaddik, we're saying. Bafel became any tzaddik cloud, but yet he's not a tzaddik. What do you mean? He's in full control, that his thoughts and his speech and his action are holy, because he has the impulses still. The driving impulses are still very strong. The fact, the dominance he has, that he's in charge of the animal soul, is only controlling the way the impulses are coming out in the body, that they're not able to come out into the thought, speech, and action. He's totally in control of the thought, speech, and action. Shloisha levushim, the three garments in his Kalmir that we mentioned before. But he did not change the animal, the essence of the animal, the 10 attributes of this powerful animal. It's instinctive, gets angry, gets jealous. Didn't control. He still has all the jealousy and all these things. He's not in control at all on the impulses that these animals feeling, because the animalistic tendencies that come from the covering of godliness that's in the animal soul in the left side of the heart that's full of blood, he was not pushed out at all in the Beinani. He's full, on fire, lustful, impulsive, and driving for these unhealthy things. Achrat tefillah, once you finish praying, because during prayer we learned 2 days ago in Tanya on Friday, that when you daven and you're into it, you have this kind of this little breather. You become like a tzaddik a little bit, like you're davening and you're thinking, you're listening to the rabbi's speech, you're listening to the Torah reading, and you're motivated. You're in another world. Your animal soul's quiet. But the second you finish davening, all of a sudden the animal awakens, and it kiyim toikef ratzuf avam misuteres shiava tivishem nefesh lekis k'moshes bala kaman. You feel it, during prayer, the fire's turned on like the gas oven. It's full on 500-600 degrees, and it just melts everything that's there. But after the prayer, the love goes back into the recesses of the heart, and it goes back into the nature, and it gets quiet. The fire is only a pilot. The fire is totally gone. And then you're leaving room for the foolish, wicked one, the animal instinct, to all of a sudden start feeling all its passions and desires and impulses, everything it wants. The Sava is Taiva has it to lust and desire everything in this world at once. But he was during davening, it might be quiet. But all of a sudden afterwards, I want this, but it's wrong for you, it's not healthy, it's fake, it's darkness, it's not real. Darkness compared to light doesn't matter. He wants, he wants maybe permitted things just to be lustful, like you want to indulge just to indulge, or maybe even God forbid prohibited things. And it's almost like he didn't daven, and you don't know what's wrong with you. The guy's in Shul and Yom Kippur, feels like he's the greatest saint, and then he comes down the next day after Yom Kippur, and he's the same guy. So when he was in Shul and davening, he was on fire, like he almost felt like a tzaddik. All of a sudden, he's back to reality. Look who I really am. He goes to a motivational lecture, maybe like imagine go to a good marriage class. He wants to be an amazing spouse, and he's all on fire. And then the next day, this lecture's over. He's back to the same nitty gritty and dealing with the silly things that he's caught up in. Now, he wants to tell you that, so what happens is the impulses of the animal soul start rising, and he's telling you to think about this prohibited thing. Now, when it's going into the brain here, it's going to explain a little bit, divide what's happening. So the impulse of the animal soul is that, okay, think about this prohibited thing. In the Beinani, his mind will only go that far, meaning what? He's controlling himself, and he might to what? To not think about the prohibited thing that your impulse is telling you to think about. But one thing the Beinani is not feeling, he's not having an impulse to actually figure out how to do the prohibited thing, right? So maybe, God forbid, someone's really angry at someone and he wants to hurt them. So the impulse in the person is, go give the guy a punch. So he might entertain it, the Beinani might entertain in his mind and say, I really wish I could give the guy a punch. If he's full control, he'll stop that thought and say, I'm not going to think about that. I'm pushing that away. But he'll never go as far as to use his brain to say, okay, let me make this plan. I'm going to go to his house. You know what I mean? Actually figure out how to act on it. The Beinani is not really struggling with that. He's in control of that. He knows he's never really going to beat the guy up. But even the thoughts of let me indulge on that thought of how I could beat the guy up, that's where his struggle is in. Now with actually figuring out how to do it, he's not caught up in that. The Beinani's mind is the struggle is not over let me control myself from actually doing it. No. What is his struggle that he's actually on a regular basis fighting? He's controlling his mind to he's controlling his mind that it shouldn't think about delving into these topics that are prohibited. But he's not actually ever thinking, how am I actually going to beat the guy up? He's saying, I don't want to think about people in a negative state of mind, and I'm going to control my mind, and I'm not going to think about it. And that's his daily struggle that he has. But he wants you to know, Tanya's saying, even though you're not actually thinking, how can I actually do this sin? Like, for example, beat the guy up. You're only thinking, oh, I wish I could beat him up. You should know those thoughts contaminate your mind too, because you are the closest to your mind. So even if you think these prohibited things, how you hate someone or how not nice people are, whatever your brain is indulging in at that time, you're contaminating yourself. Now you might say, oh, big deal. I didn't even speak bad about him. I didn't even act bad on him. Yeah, but you know what? You know, the closest to you is your brain. And therefore, the more negative things you actually allow your impulse to grow in your mind and continue to think on them, you're contaminating yourself. You're making yourself this ugly person of the things you're thinking about. So you might not actually be sinning. You might not actually be beating the guy up. You might even think of how to beat the guy up, but you hate the guy in your brain. You're contaminating your heart, your essence, your soul, as you think about these things. And you're going to have a hard time learning Torah and doing mitzvahs because you're contaminated with these unhealthy thoughts. And like the rabbis of blessed memory say about this struggle of the Beinoni. This is the last line in Tanya here today. There's 3 sins that people are not safe from them every day. There's 3 sins that every single day, man, and this is a man's struggle, and everyone has a struggle. Hirur Avera, thinking about prohibited thoughts, contaminating your mind with prohibited thoughts, and also even tefillah, and also not praying. It's very hard to sit and focus the whole davening. So we see that no man avoids these sins. So that is the impulse that the Beinoni has. His heart wants him to think bad thoughts and say gossip and do things that are prohibited. And he's constantly fighting and struggling to stay in control, that they shouldn't act. And he's in control. If he falls and he loses control, then he becomes a rasha at that moment, like we learned in the previous chapter of Tanya. Very interesting. That is the end of today's class on Tanya.